I never really got into first-person shooters until Halo Combat Evolved debuted in 2001. I was a real-time strategy nerd as a kid, and I've been making up for it ever since. I've already bought more movement shooters than I will ever be able to play in a single lifetime. I don't know why, maybe I'm just a digital hoarder. I didn't actually buy Prodeus, though. It was thrown onto PlayStation Plus, and I decided to give it a try. It's been my in-between game for a while now, the game I play when I'm working on a video and don't want to start up my next review just yet. I'm going to switch up this review format a little, give some background information, and then hit things in more of a pro and con order. It's just fun to experiment. Prodeus started its life on Kickstarter in 2019, spent a few years in early access, and released in 2022. It's developed by Bounding Box and is their only game to date. Prodeus is a love letter to Duke Nukem and Wolfenstein and all the legends of old, and its successful Kickstarter funding was a spark of the second wave powder keg of Doom clones, which we're now calling boomer shooters or movement shooters. Prodeus checks all the boxes of the genre, an absence of dialogue or story, with an emphasis on satisfying gunplay and movement, tons of gore, colorful key cards, a try-hard soundtrack, and secret finding. It also modernizes the recipe pretty substantially. Missions are more linear than maze-like. There are respawn checkpoints, it's available on consoles, the HUD is sleek and open, and weapons require reloads. It also cribs some features from out-of-genre games, such as a Super Mario overworld and level select system, and it also includes a bit of mission-to-mission metagame that arises from a shop feature, with currency collected as hidden ore fragments throughout the levels and used to purchase character upgrades and unlock new weapons. Although it's clearly a callback and retread of existing standards, the attempts to modernize through out-of-genre conventions does show a willingness to push the medium forward while still giving the fans what they want. Let's start off with the strong parts. My favorite things about Prodeus are all evident in the very first level. The PlayStation 5 default controls are nearly perfect out of the box, with no tuning necessary. Movement and aiming feel snappy and fluid, and the moment we get the starting pistol and shoot a few rounds. Oh, it's magic. The guns have great feedback on all counts, from the bark of the barrel to the exploding demon downrange. Almost every weapon in this game is terrific and occupies a unique niche, with only a few weapons that decidedly phase out as more become available. I could easily see any gun except the Chaos Caster as someone's favorite. Personally, I favored the Shredders and quadruple-barreled shotgun for most of my playthrough. I usually judge these games by how good their heavy machine gun is. The Gatling gun is absolutely terrific to use at short range, but there's some tough competition with the shotguns, and the Shredders have a better mid-range game. Plus, alternating their firing makes me feel like Carl Weathers in Predator. It's a tough call on favorites, but I did end up using every weapon extensively. Each weapon has an alternate firing mode that usually eats up ammo, and these range from the boomstick firing all 4 shells simultaneously to the plasma rifle shooting a homing beacon. There's a lot of variety, although the more traditional bullet-fed guns have more appealing sound effects, and that generally made me favor them over the high-tech rifles. The music is a rip-roaring, somewhat over-the-top pastiche of Doom's soundtrack, with better audio fidelity, of course. None of the tracks jumped out as instant classics, but it definitely captures the tone and mood you want for running and gunning. Plus, it provides a busy base layer for the gunshots to crack out of. Entering new levels is initially daunting, but after 2 or 3 runs you really appreciate how streamlined their designs are. There's mountains of verticality, and transitioning between outdoor and indoor areas. They've also largely eliminated the maze-like design of their predecessors and modernized the traditional keycard hunts by setting enemy spawn points in the direction you're supposed to go, so there's rarely a moment of path indecision. And the inclusion of extremely well-hidden secrets provides replayability to the levels. We travel through a few distinct biomes in this game, starting from a demon-ravaged human colony with a range of environments from drab, earthy asteroid mining operations to more advanced doomsday device-type machinery, and labs blending science and sorcery as they open portals to hell. Then we move into the realm of Prodeus, a constantly reforming realm seeking the most perfectly ordered existence, where strange spires and pyramids shift amidst black sands, and everything seems vaguely inspired by basalt columns. And at the very end, we whip between a spaceship, the frozen ruins of a world, and a vision of hell straight out of Blood. Each biome has a different color emphasis, and surprisingly, the enemies seem to fit in no matter which biome they're slapped into. All of the biomes are stylistically distinct and interesting, while the change of environments enhances the feeling of momentum towards a greater challenge, which is helped by the steady introduction of new enemies throughout the entire game. Last, I really appreciate that Prodeus is completable in around 6 hours. I personally always prefer a game with great gameplay and a succinct runtime that prevents it from growing old. I'd rather wish there was more of a game than to put it down because I got bored slogging through hours of padding. I like games with narrow focus and tight construction, and this game very nearly succeeds at both. Let's pivot to the parts I disliked. None of them are really problems in the way a game-breaking bug is a problem. These are just matters of preference and opinion. There's a pretty large weak spot in the control scheme for this game. On the controller, there's no way to easily and immediately switch between weapons. I'm not even talking about animation canceling or anything cheesy, just regular easy mode gameplay. You'll need to hold down the left bumper and navigate the weapon grid with the D-pad. This pause creates a noticeable break in the action, since it's the only pausing you'll do, and the game otherwise attempts to cultivate an extreme sense of unbroken forward momentum. The alternative weapon switch is to press the D-pad to shuffle left or right through weapons. However, since weapons are grouped by ammo type, all of your immediate switching options will act very similar to your current weapon, and the jump between a machine gun and the Chaos Sniper Rifle may require 8 button presses. After a bit of practice, the weapon grid wins out as the faster choice, and this is probably not an issue on PC where you could simply hotkey individual weapons, but it's a noticeable flaw on an otherwise stellar attempt to translate the controls to a gamepad. The actual design of enemies didn't interest me very much. The majority are basic zombie marines and a rehash of Doom's demons, with the Proteus forces just being a blue raspberry flavor of the same enemies. The biggest pain point I had was the secret finding. Secrets in this game range from fairly obvious to incredibly well hidden. This is nothing new for the genre, but the inclusion of the non-repeatable, mostly hidden currency for the shop turns secret finding from a cool little side adventure for diehard fans into an integral part of the gameplay loop that everyone must interact with. There seems to be a bit of splintering of focus here. Everything in Prodeus, from the quick enemy attacks to the streamlined linear levels and pounding music, is screaming to move quickly and cause carnage. First into battle and last one standing, covered in mud and blood and beer. So why isn't the gaining of currency, and thus the unlocking of weapons, tied to that? There are weapon challenge missions where completing the mission under a time limit gives you ore. I was left wondering why they didn't tie the currency fully to kill count, difficulty completed, speed goals, or some other measure of how much ass you've kicked. The whole shop seems to be at cross-purpose with the main gameplay. Instead of getting the best guns because you conquered with speed and fury, you're expected to slowly, methodically search out every corner of the map, or use a guide and find the secrets on autopilot. It seems like they streamed away all of the exploration elements of a game like Doom in favor of their linear levels. and then realize the impetus to explore is wildly downplayed in favor of deft action in a straight line. The challenge is different without the complexity of a maze. The fundamental reward of exploration has changed from the immediate boost of advancement or grabbing extra ammo and health or getting a gun early, to more long-term character enhancement bonuses filtered through a currency. Ultimately, there's nothing wrong with it, but it felt like a last-ditch effort to convince the player base to explore the maps thoroughly, despite all the design decisions telling you to whip through levels. Last, there's a certain unevenness to the campaign. The first 20 or so missions all take place in the sprawling, chaos-contaminated, barren world. Then you enter a portal, and 4 missions take place in the Prodeus realm, then 2 on an iced-over planetoid, and 2 final missions in Hell. It's an odd imbalance, and it does sort of feel rushed in a bizarre conclusion, as though they committed too many resources to developing the first section, and then quickly shoehorned the other 2 realms in to meet a quota. The game also ends on a strange cliffhanger, where it feels like the story was meant to continue into another, longer realm. It's very abrupt, but at least the final arena challenge is pretty cool. So overall, the good outweighs the bad on this one. I quite like the modernized elements of this game, as it makes it incredibly approachable to people who never really played those 90s first-person shooters, but are interested in them. The controls will be immediately familiar to anyone who's played a recent shooter game, which lowers the barrier to entry pretty substantially compared to the genuine classics with their now outmoded control schemes. I'm also fairly sure there are a lot of people with very strong opinions on categorization who would claim that this isn't technically a boomer shooter because the pistol's alt-fire has you aim down iron sights and you have to reload the plasma rifle, but I'm not as interested in categorization as I am in whether I had a good time with it. And in this case, I did. On the pain scale, I'd rate this one as a slightly painful. Even though I loved the gunplay, the focus on exploration and the unevenness of the ending threw me off. I definitely recommend it to anyone who is interested in games like Doom, Quake, or Duke Nukem and has made attempts at them but bounced off due to the controls or issues with the graphics. I had a great time blasting demons, and I think Prodeus is a perfect entry point into the modern movement shooter renaissance. Well, that's all for my 19th review. While I was editing this review, I hit 100 followers, and it's kind of a milestone, so I'd just like to thank everyone who liked and subscribed and left a comment. It means a lot. It's kind of shocking how many people are willing to listen to some Appalachian farmer talk about video games. But thank you. See ya!